everything?
I think he does have a copy of everything.
I have my media for all my. If it's an album that's important to me, I have it. I mean, I'd probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 2,500, 3,000 CDs. But I have well over 10,000 books.
All I can say is that you must have a very large house.
4 bedrooms and bookcases or bookshelves in every room of the house except for the bathrooms.
So there's room to expand. We are live, by the way.
Why not in the bathrooms?
Humidity destroys books. I sometimes keep cheap paperbacks in the bathroom.
Anyways, we are live. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me for our July Music Club. I am going to go through my standard array of things that I say at the start of all of these. So this is our music club, but we actually have a monthly movie club, which met on Friday. So that should be up on YouTube. And if you watch it and you have something you'd like to add to the conversation, absolutely feel free to reach out to me and tell me your thoughts and feelings, or put a comment on the video and I will read them later on. I always like discussing media. It's why I started these clubs. So absolutely, let me know if you wanted to discuss The Boys in the Band. And if you wanted to discuss the book Easy Riders, Raging Bull, we actually have our discussion on that coming up on Thursday. It's going to be the same group of people. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a lot of crazy things that happened. It's going to be an interesting discussion. So if you'd like to join our discussion for any of our other clubs, I announce them on the first of the month. Our movie and listening clubs are monthly. Our book club is quarterly, but we will be announcing all 3 at the start of the next month. There is a poll that's currently up in the Facebook group. So I'm getting feedback from somebody. So if you have an opinion on it, please put your vote in, and then whatever wins is going to get picked. You can find all of that in our Facebook group, which I have put on the screen, and I probably should have put on the screen earlier. We don't just do these multimedia clubs there. We also have a lot of discussions. It's just a group of creatives talking about problems that happen with being creatives. We have weekly calls. We have a writers group. We have meetups occasionally if you're in the Los Angeles area. So a lot of really cool stuff that we do. And if you like us and want to support what we do and our mission, you can support us over on Patreon. Everything that we offer is currently available for free in our Facebook group, but we do appreciate any support that you can offer, so you can support us for as little as $2 a month over there. And without further ado, let's talk about Wayne Kramer's Dangerous Madness, which was a pick by Tim. And something that I did, I had to go deep into things. I was trying to find any information, because usually when I pick things, they have a Wikipedia page or a couple of interviews that I can read off of. This one was very much me delving into different things. I read a lot of reviews. So what made you pick this album?
I made a huge list, probably all the stuff I ever sent to you, and then I just gradually started narrowing it down and trying to find. I have a general idea of what you guys' taste is like, so I was trying to find something that would be something that I think is important that you might not hear, but would also appeal as universally to the group as possible. And this was The Last Man Standing, alongside his first album, as a matter of fact. And I almost picked the first MC5 album, Kick Out the Jams, because that's kind of an important album as well. But there's a craftsmanship to this album that, the Kick Out the Jams MC5 stuff is very raw, and this is much more well-crafted than that.
Yeah, I like this album. It's something I never thought about. I am not familiar with Wayne Kramer outside of recognizing the name, and I am also not familiar with MC5. So either or, I probably would have taken it. And it feels weird to me that I didn't really know them. I don't know. It's very much in my like old punk days of like not necessarily music style, like stylistically music wise. It's much more, it feels like it's a product of like the 70s kind of rock, kind of like Bruce Springsteen era kind of sound sonically, but like lyrically, he has a lot of opinions and they are very intense.
I think one of the reasons I fell in love with this album was it was the first time I ever heard a songwriter address these issues in song. And it was, and when I first heard it when it came out, and I don't think I understood everything that was there. It was only as over time that I began to realize how on target he was with his visions of the America that he saw, the visions of America that I saw, back at that time.
Um, yeah, definitely. It's bonkers to me that you didn't notice that at the time because this is like I feel like lyrically more clear to me than a lot of albums. Like he's it's not nuanced.
No,
it is very in your face about
I
it.
think I was so taken by the aggression of the music that the lyrics were very secondary to me at the time. It was just the energy of Dangerous Madness and the closing tune, Dead Movie Stars. There was just something about that energy that really appealed to me at the time. So the lyrics came second.
I'm not going to lie. I was working while I was listening to this, so I wasn't paying that close attention to the lyrics.
Ah, you would love these lyrics.
I just looked it up and I can't find them anywhere.
You can
Yeah.
find, oh, yeah, some of them are hard to find, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's not it. I don't know how you would necessarily find the. Let's see.
Go if you search for the specific songs in Google, you will get the lyrics back. Lyric search has them. But I was looking at Genius last night, and they only have one song and the one spoken word piece. The rest of the songs they don't have lyrics for, but I think Lyric Search has all the lyrics.
I was trying to like figure out. So recently on our Coffee and Creatives call, we were talking about influences and hearing influences or seeing the influences in your work. And I honestly, for the life of me, do not know whether or not I'm hearing influences in this album because he was influenced or whether he influenced other people. And I think it's more that he influenced like a lot of other artists that I listen to. I think a lot of them come after this. I mean, it's definitely got some like Rage Against the Machine vibes.
Tom Morello was a huge MC5, and he actually he did some of the last shows Kramer did before he passed. He's a big Wayne Kramer fan.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of people are huge Wayne Kramer fans, and somehow I slept on it.
I think it's mostly musicians, and it's mostly rock musicians, and it's mostly hard rock musicians and punks, heavy metal, thrash, any kind of music like that. Yeah, a lot of them are Wayne Kramer and MC5 fans.
Yeah, I had never heard of Wayne Kramer before. Also, I must admit, I'm not hugely proficient in 70s music.
This is the 90s.
But MC5 is the 70s, and this is still
more this band in the beginning of the 70s. They tanked really early on as the music business changed.
So tell us, Rebecca, when was the album released?
So this album was released in 1996. It is actually his third solo album. This is, from everything that I've read about, second solo album. It's listed as his third.
It's his second.
Huh.
Maybe he just has a secret one that was released in 1991.
This is number one, the hard stuff.
Yes. Which
This
is
is
what
number-
I thought it was until like I started going through his discography.
That's number two, Dangerous Madness. This is number three, Citizen Wayne.
Yes, which great name.
I don't know what that is.
so-
His first album. He was doing a lot after he got out of prison. He did a lot of sideman work with pretty much everybody. A lot of Was Not Was material. He worked a lot with Don Was, who also produced some of his work later on.
I think that he produced a weird musical thing and that it was performed in 1991 and then was released later on.
Oh, that could be.
Oh, and they're counting that as his first album?
And they're counting that as his first album.
Interesting.
I mean, I've done very little research on it, but all I can find is this is a musical about about gangster Dutch Schultz as well as Farron's spoken word Death Tongue. And that is the only information, but I think that maybe this wasn't necessarily a solo project and was instead a different project, and that's where I'm getting confused about it. But yeah, this was his solo work after, the fall of MC5, which actually was in 1972, 71, somewhere around there. So he spent a lot of time in the middle, I think, just producing and working on other people's stuff. And also doing drugs. He did a lot of drugs.
They were never a pop band, so they had a hard time fitting into, any kind of, they were too difficult for even a lot of hard rock fans at the time who were mostly listening to Zeppelin and Aerosmith, which is not where the MC5 fell.
Yeah, and they were also very divisive, and I guess a lot of the people that were funding them repeatedly got sent to jail for selling drugs. So
Their manager, John Sinclair.
Yeah, specifically John Sinclair, who was also a co-founder of the White Panther Party.
Yep.
Like,
no. This was they supported the Black Panthers. They were not white nationalists.
It does sound like that when you say it out loud, but no, they're all radical leftists.
Yeah.
And their lyrics are all incredibly radical leftists. He was also in prison for a period of time after, you guessed it, selling drugs.
Selling what?
It doesn't state. It just says selling drugs to undercover federal agents.
Probably
However,
marijuana.
probably a joint.
Yeah.
Probably marijuana. I think that a lot of people just kind of forget. I don't, because I grew up then, how conservative our government, particularly our federal government, was during those years, during the 60s and the 70s. Even when Jimmy Carter was president, the government was still relatively conservative, while the culture was moving, to the left during the 60s. And then the culture kind of went towards the center towards the end of the 70s. And then Reagan wins with a 70%, 70 to 30 margin, if you can even imagine that being possible. And then then from Reagan, you can draw a straight line to where we are today. But America was very conservative and very racist in the 60s and 70s.
Arguably, it always has been.
I was going to say, it's interesting listening to these lyrics and being like, this was 1996, and then you listen to like some of like the MC5 lyrics and you're like, that was the 1970s, and all of it is still pretty relevant today. And I could say that for a lot of the albums we listen to. It feels like they all should have been wake-up calls, and all of them are just incredibly relevant and still playable today as like protest songs.
It's almost like if you don't address these issues, they persist.
Imagine that.
You know, I didn't ask. Did you like the album, Beckett? I think I know Tim's answer on that. So
Hated it.
It was not my style. I did enjoy the more lyrical songs. I did not like the spoken word stuff.
Oh, okay.
the spoken word stuff really reminds me of Tom Waits, and that was another thing of like, am I hearing an influence? Like, but or is this an influence to the other way? Like, I don't know.
But again, I wasn't really paying attention to the lyrics, so maybe if I gave it another listen, I would have a different feeling about it. It just wasn't really. I don't know.
I mean, there's a few of these songs that kind of have hooks to them, but a lot of them, I feel like you have to listen to the lyrics. I feel like the lyrics are more the point. Except for The Boys Got That Look, which was stuck in my head today.
That's like a pop tune. That's like the pop tune on the album.
Yeah, some of these reminded me of like early Green Day a little bit.
Yeah. Wild America, you know, is a pop tune.
Yeah.
Boys Got That Look is a pop tune. Everything else is definitely angled a little bit.
What's your favorite song on the album?
I couldn't name one. I don't know.
I can't.
I mean, only because I wasn't paying that close attention. I was working. So
I hope you'll go back and listen to it and see if you like it or not. Just, in the future.
I don't know. I found his voice a little grating in the speaking aspect. Like the singing, fine. But I don't know. I didn't care for being shouted at.
Yeah. He kind of growls.
Well, it was just the quality of it wasn't, I don't know. It wasn't like appealing to my ears.
Right. That's how my mom feels about Steely Dan. She hates Donald Fagen.
But you don't have a favorite, Tim?
Oh, I do. Yeah, Dead Movie Stars.
Fair.
I hated that. Movie Stars.
God, I love that. That's Kramer's free jazz kind of thing, tied to the spoken word thing. I love Dead Movie Stars, but I also love Dangerous Madness. I love the humor of God's Worst Nightmare. And I love the pointed attack at the media, Rats of Illusion.
Yes.
Of which Dead Movie Stars is kind of a sequel to.
I think lyrically, I really liked Rats of Illusion, but because it got stuck in my head, I'm going to give it to The Boys Got That Look. Because I just have to give it to the credit of the thing that got stuck in my head, and like not really annoyingly either.
Yeah.
So
I figured that would be one that Beckett would like. If there was anything she would like on the album, I thought you would like Boys Got That Look.
It did have a definite like melodic quality that was repeated throughout. So yeah, I could see how it would get stuck in your head.
Yeah.
All right. I also wanted to just talk about how because he had to produce this, but there's several of these where he's doing vocals, bass, and guitar, which means that he had to overlay the sounds together. And that's interesting to me because this has a very together feel to it that a part of me wants to be like, I assume start with the bass, build the guitars on top of that, build the vocals on top of that. But it's like very cohesive and loose.
The energy sounds like a live album. The energy makes it sound like it was recorded live rather than layered.
Yeah, and that's incredibly impressive to me. The Farron on these.
I was just saying, look, there's Chad Smith on Dead Movie Stars.
That's true. I was actually looking for his name on this. But no, I was also going to say a lot of these were also written by Michael Farren, who I believe is the person that he worked with on. Well, he did some work with MC5, but
Oh,
I think that weird 1991 album that I was talking about, that I think was just like a weird musical, I think they also did that together.
yeah.
Um, and I'm not sure about it. Was he like the lyricist? Do you know?
I don't know. I couldn't say. I don't know. I mean, it looks like they're co-writers, but if Wayne Kramer wrote Rats of Illusion, then I want to say that he was the primary lyricist, and maybe Farron had a hand in the music.
Mm. Because I also had to read up on Mick Farren. I don't know anything about him, and all I know now is that he was a frequent collaborator with them and a journalist.
Hmm.
He probably led into like a lot of the R&B influences on this album. Not that I really found that there were a lot of it, but there are on some other Wayne Kramer things that
Hmm.
I've noticed have also been collaborations with McFerrin. So I feel like he is more of a R&B kind of vibe. But again, I don't know anything about him, so I
I
am just
find,
making things up.
I find this fascinating. I never really gave Farron any thought whatsoever. So now I feel like I need to go find out where the split is in terms of writing.
Yeah, I'm really relying on you with this one, Tim.
Um, I can tell you, you see, how many fans he's got. He's got Chad Smith on drums. You might not know who David McMurray was, but he's a avant-garde jazz saxophone player. Who else is on here that I know? Brett Gurwitz is the founder of Epitaph Records, and I forget what punk band he was a member of. Perhaps you know that off the top of your head.
Off the top of my head, no, but off the top of my Google,
Yeah, Brett Gurwitz.
Bad Religion.
Thank you. Bad Religion. And Epitaph was his record label, and Kramer put out his first three albums on that. But one of the things that's interesting about Kramer is that it took him so long to do a solo album. But he was doing a lot of sideman, but he was also working as a carpenter, as I'm sure you found that in your Google research. He was doing a lot of non-musical work to pay the bills. But I think his career started rolling again when he became friends with Don Was and started working with them a lot. And they continued to work together for quite some time.
Yeah, I think you are right with that. Um, I think he became a carpenter.
Yeah.
So from the time that like MC5 disbanded until like 1994, he was just working as a carpenter and playing with local bands and kind of fell into the background. So he kind of exploded back in.
He was also working as a thief, and
Hmm.
he and there was the
Probably a drug dealer as well.
yes, there was the stint in jail.
Hmm. Where
But
he met a lot of jazz trumpeters, it seems.
Red Rodney, trumpeter Red Rodney, he met in jail, and I think it was Rodney who turned him onto avant-garde jazz. And Rodney was a very famous trumpet player. Came out at the same time period as Miles Davis, Clifford Brown, and all those cats. But he was mostly a West Coast guy, I think, as I recall. But for all the bad stuff that Kramer did, he was a good man. He really was. He loved people. He was a big believer in people, and one of the last thing he did for the last, I think, 15, maybe 20 years of his life was a program called Jail Guitar Doors, which was designed to put instruments in the hand of prisoners, and give them something something productive to do, and to have them interact musically. And he was so that was the most important thing in his world for the last 10 years, 15 years of his life, was taking care of the people that he left behind when he got out.
Yeah, I think that I mean, for how much I brought up like this jail time, I never once wanted to insinuate that he was a bad guy. He never struck me as that. It more is just the revolutionary vibe makes sense to me that was the. But I think it did definitely shape his persona because when he came out, he also did a lot of tours and played with a lot of musicians that were specifically going to prisons and became very, very big in getting music back into prisons. This was released in 1996. He does say that he became completely sober in 2001.
Yeah.
And remained that way for the rest of his life.
Yeah, doing time in prison does not necessarily mean you're a bad person. It just means you broke the law, whether that was, right, whether a law is correct or not. So,
yeah,
he was poor. He was poor, and I'm not saying that poor people should commit crimes, but when you're impoverished, you do desperate things quite often. And I'm a believer that drugs never should have been a crime in the first place. So, him being arrested by a conservative government in the United States certainly doesn't reflect on him in any way. But yeah, I mean, he was punished for being poor.
Yeah. Worryingly, I used to date briefly a person who was in the police academy who thought that automatically being a felon meant you were like an evil person.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're going to be a cop. This is problematic.
They should probably listen to the lyrics of this album.
Yeah.
And I will keep saying that. I will say for MC5, they did have an album released last year.
Yeah, Kramer reformed MC5 with whoever was available who wanted to participate. People who exuded the spirit of MC5 were the people he chose to join the band, and the band kind of changed depending on who was available on the tour. But there was, I mean, it was a great tour for him, and it was a great way for him to go out to see that there was still this love for the band at that point.
Yeah, he died early last year, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the album came out late last year.
Yeah.
So I believe it was posthumous. I think also the only other member, Dennis Thompson, also died in early 2024. Mm-hmm. So I think on that album were only 2 original members. Everyone else had already passed. And actually, I'm not even sure about that. I'm not even sure. Let me double check my information real quick here.
I have it right here. So Fred Sonic Smith, who was married to Patti Smith, by the way, he passed away a long time ago, 1994. And Tyner passed away relatively recently. I'm wrong. No, Tyner passed away in 91. He was the lead singer. He screamed a lot. And then Michael Davis must be Michael Davis passed away in 2012.
Mm-hmm. So I think actually looking at this, I'm pretty sure that he's the only original member of MC5 that was on Heavy Lifting. And even that, it was released posthumously for him.
You mean posthumously?
Posthumously, yes. I always say it wrong.
Posthumously would be somewhere down here in the upper arm.
or after the humor.
Yeah, or after the joke.
Yeah.
Or after the joke,
when we're done laughing.
One of the interesting songs on here, I think, is Back to Detroit, because he's talking about what's happening in Detroit at the time. And it's really kind of a moving snapshot of how the Reagan years contributed to the downfall of that once great city, which, the Motor City itself, that's all on what happened, post Reagan. That is all about Reagan and his policies. I met somebody on a job that I was at about a year and a half ago, I think, and he was telling me how there's still a gentrification problem there, but Detroit is starting to come back as a city, but it's going to look very differently from the city that it was in post-war, the immediate post-war America of the 60s and 70s.
You wouldn't believe the number of people that constantly tell me that you could just buy easy real estate in Detroit. I'm
I
like,
was
that sounds gross. Not
Like,
living in Detroit, but like going there specifically because the property is.
yeah,
Yeah.
the property is easy to scoop up right now.
Yeah. So yeah, it is nice that the city's coming back, but
It'll never be what it was. It will never be a
will,
working class paradise again.
yeah.
So I was going to say, it's funny. We haven't really talked too much about the songs. We've talked about the politics of the album, and the politics related to the culture at the time, which is fine. I just find that interesting.
I mean, that's kind of what we end up doing is we end up talking about the album as a whole and as a whole being. Where did you want to talk about any song in like
No,
specifically?
no, not really. I just find it interesting that that's where the conversation went. I mean, like I said, my when I first heard this album, which was back when it was released, I was just attracted to the aggression of the music because there was, you know, this is pre Guns N' Roses. So hard rock is really in a bit of a hole at this point. The grunge thing kind of, was in a strange thing. And this album came out, and his first album, and I went back and got his first album after I heard this one. And just, I mean, it was hard rock the way I thought of hard rock back when I was growing up. So it was just nice to hear, and didn't hear again until the first Guns N' Roses album back in, what was that, 99, I think, or 98.
Yeah.
Yeah, at this
It's
time. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, you go.
I was just gonna say, if it wasn't on K Rock, I wasn't listening to it, so I didn't hear any Wayne Kramer.
This is one of those interesting ones where, I didn't hear this album when it came out. This I was young. Um, so I am approaching this from the other direction where, like I said, I can hear a lot of the influences, but I'm pretty sure this album influenced a lot of those things that I'm hearing in this music. So for me, this is actually less aggressive than a lot of music that I grew up with or listened to during my rebellious years. And so it's really interesting to hear you like consistently say aggression because I hear it in the lyrics, but I hear it less in the music. Like it feels more toned down.
It's very consistent
Aggression-wise.
with it's very consistent with punk of the mid to late 70s, except it's got a level of craft to the songwriting that punk music did not have at the time.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I grew up with like punk of, the 90s, which is sonically way more aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I think hard rock, I think more along the lines of like Nine Inch Nails. So, this is a little bit mellow compared to that.
Well,
So,
I mean,
so it was really interesting to like hear you constantly say that this album's very aggressive because this album doesn't feel aggressive to me.
right. It's aggressive to the rock standards that I was accustomed to at the time. This was how aggressive punk got at that time, musically, but the musicians here are a lot better than most of the punk artists of that time, and the songwriting is better. And I think of a group like one of your favorites, Green Day. There's a level of songwriting in Green Day that the punkers of the 70s never even got close to,
Yeah, and it's interesting because that's kind of where punk music went in that time, like late 90s, early 2000s. As opposed to like the just very clash punk noise of like the 80s. yeah, it was a different sound. A lot of like hardcore punks would consider someone like Green Day more pop.
Yeah.
I had a thought and it left. So give me a second here. I think that there's a level of technique in this like musicality of this album that is just missing from like a lot of the punk that I grew up with, which was very much felt like kids in a garage just getting their emotions out as aggressively as possible. And one of the reasons why this sounds so much more toned down to me is because these are like really good musicians.
Yeah.
Like he spent years playing like jazz and like working with people musically and working with a whole different style of people and learning his craft and then coming back and using it to push this message forward. And so it just like it. So there's a thing that I noticed when I was listening to this album, that this album is very well produced. And I think he did the production himself. Don't quote me on that. Actually, wait, I have the. Yeah, I think he did the.
Produced by Wayne Kramer, but I'm sure Brett Gurwitz was, probably co-producing, if not, by name. He's standing behind Wayne in case he needs help.
I listened to this album with headphones on, and there was like a lot of panning going on, and like a lot of like panning techniques and placement in like levels within it that I learned when I was studying music in college. So there's definitely like a level of studied technique that went into this. And granted, I think a lot of that is probably these engineers, but that's also something that like when I listen to like the punk of the other punk that was coming out during this time frame, because I think a lot of it was coming out of this time frame, it was just like abrasive and just kind of everybody, it felt like a free-for-all. And this was very like, you can tell what every instrument is doing at every point in time.
Yeah, I mean, you had different kind of levels of punk coming out around this time. Like Dead Kennedys is very different from like the Green Days or the other kind of more pop punky artists. That there's different levels of like music versus lyrics versus aggressive noise.
And I think that's one of the reasons why these lyrics stand out to me and why I could understand the lyrics the entire time, despite the fact that I don't have them in front of me, which I usually have for every album that we do. And I sit there and I read them occasionally.
Well, and he enunciates very well.
Yes.
Like, this is not like mumble music. This is not scream, rock. This is you can tell exactly what he's saying.
The technique on this album is there and very impressive.
I also think about Jello Biafra, whose political position is very well aligned with Wayne. But Jello just doesn't fucking care. There's not a lot of subtlety at all in his lyrics. And he's, if you want to say that Wayne Kramer is an iffy singer, Jello Biafra is like not a singer at all. I find that interesting. I didn't know that the Dead Kennedys were still recording anything back in the 90s.
Were they? I don't know. I mean, they were
from my era.
I feel like they were making music when I was in high school, were they not?
They were making music until the 1986. So this era was a lot more like the start of Green Day, kind of. Offspring was coming out during this time. I think also it was
some of the hardcore punk I was listening to at the time was.
All of us like just typing. Rage Against the Machine was during this time.
I mean, East Bay Ray, who was the guitar player for the Kennedys, was still out there, is still out there now, playing as the Dead Kennedys. But Jello's doing his own thing. He turns up on YouTube videos when I'm going through my YouTube watch list. He turns up a lot.
Yeah, I feel like this was like Warped Tour era.
Yeah,
Style
AFI.
punk.
AFI
No effects.
Yeah, no effects.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who honestly, like thinking about it, way less political. Like the 80s was kind of king for me in terms of just like radical punk. So I think even MC5, like you said, was way ahead of their times in regards of that. And it's probably what led to them getting dropped by their label and eventually disbanding.
I seem to recall there was a problem with an album. Maybe there was some questionable lyrics or a questionable title or something that had something to do with that. I'm vaguely remembering that.
They were banned from the radio and government police agencies for their militant political stances. And since they were unable to tour, they were unable to promote their records and did not make any sales and got dropped because they refused to play them on the radio.
It reminds me of this story that Quincy Jones told. I think it was in the Playboy interview back like 25, 30 years ago, maybe longer. And he says Marvin Gaye calls him in the middle of the night. And he says, "I've got the title for my new album." And Q says, "Okay, well, yeah, what?" He says, "The title is I Want to Fuck Your Mother." And Q was like, "Yeah, you can't call your album I Want to Fuck Your Mother."
Yeah.
So that's the conversation.
I feel like we started this conversation talking about how conservative the time was when MC5 was around, and we've come full circle on it. So yeah, it is really interesting to listen to this album. I want to thank you for picking it because I am now a huge fan of Wayne Kramer, and I never considered that before. I just kind of missed the boat on it, and I feel bad about it.
Oh, don't feel bad about it. I'll send you some links to some really good material.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm passionate about him because it's not just his music. It's that his music is a reflection of who he is as a person. And I find that really fascinating that you find that, he's not writing music to get record sales. He does music because that's just simply who he is. And it's a reflection. His music is or who he was, and he lives on in people like Tom Morello.
I think that's why it's so lyrically resonant as well, is there's like a authenticity about all of this music. Like you feel it in your soul. You know that his words are ringing true. Like, yeah, I think this was a great album choice.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I hope Beckett will go back and give it a listen while she's not working.
Yeah, it's tough because I don't listen to a lot of music just to listen to it. Like it's usually something I'll put on while I'm doing something else. So with something this heady, it's difficult to. I'll try to fit in a listen somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm not ashamed to say that when he passed, I got very teary-eyed because, I mean, I wish I was as good a man as he was. I mean, I just think he was an honest guy who cared about people, and he put it all out there in his music, and I admire him, as greatly as I admire my jazz influences. And I'm glad that you guys took the time to give this album a shot. Again, I picked it because I thought it was something I believed it was something that most of us could get into. Whereas a lot of the things that I would have normally picked, if I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna make them listen to this album, this was definitely not that album.
I would say even if you don't want to listen to the album again, look up his Wikipedia page and look at everything that he's done since like the year 2005, because all of it has just been really good social work and really good pushing a message and putting in really good work. A lot of like benefit concerts, and then going on to do like things that like using his art to like make the world a better place. And I have a lot of respect for that.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to add to this discussion, so I do want to ask if anyone else does. Otherwise, we can end the stream for the evening.
Just that Wikipedia says that the late 90s was kind of the era for the pop punk explosion.
I think, Warped Tour.
Which to me, those two words go together in the same way that smooth jazz and soft rock go together. It doesn't make sense to me when you combine pop and punk.
I mean, that's one of those things with genre of just like pop literally just means popular. So
yeah,
literally anything, what pop is going to change over time. So I think pop punk 100% makes sense for that era where MTV was like a huge thing and everybody just wanted to be like this cool counterculture thing to the point where it became the main culture. There's a reason why like everybody of Beckett and my generation is just like, yeah, we all know all of these bands.
Yeah.
That's true. I don't listen to the radio anymore. I have no idea what's playing right now.
Yeah. I mean, for
K-pop.
me, I was too young in the late 60s to understand anything about what was going on in music politically. And by the time I was listening to rock and pop music, it didn't really have a whole lot of politics in it. As the punk era took hold going into the Reagan years, then you started to see that in punk, but I was busy listening to metal at the time, and that was devoid of any kind of political opinions as well. So it's when I came across this album back in '96 that I became aware of the power of political music, in the way, because of the way that Kramer just puts it out there. I mean, Bruce Springsteen has always been political, but I never really grabbed that content of his music. When I heard this album by Wayne Kramer, it's like, oh, this is how you do political storytelling in rock and roll. And that was a big door opening for me that, made me go back and consider punk artists in the late 70s, who I hadn't considered before, and political aspects of the R&B artists that I was listening to when I was growing up, like the OJs and the Temptations. And and this was the first time I saw how avant-garde free jazz could fuse with rock and roll, because I'd never heard anybody do it that way before. And, Dead Movie Stars is a great example of that kind of thing. That almost sounds like something that was recorded. If it wasn't so, the aggressiveness of what it is, you would think it was recorded during the beat days in some little club, where there's just a drummer and a bass player and a guy up front reciting spoken word in front of a duo or a jazz trio.
I'm realizing just like how much like my brain just doesn't understand the time frames of punk that I listen to. And like I really need to get my timeline straight. So that might be my goal coming up, is to just get my timeline straight of what time frames bands were popular in.
I'm finding it very interesting having these conversations with Tim, because his references for like certain genres is so different from my reference points for them. So like calling the Temptations R&B, that's not what I think of when I think R&B. Like our 90s R&B is very different.
Yeah.
So I've hit the point where like I'm recognizing like the influences in today's pop music, like they're referencing songs that I remember from my childhood. And I'm like, this is what my parents were talking about when I was listening to pop music as a kid. It's interesting how music comes around like that, and like you don't even think about it when you're younger, and then frame of reference is really interesting.
You know, when I talk about the MC5 being aggressive, I mean, if you go back and watch, there's footage on YouTube of them playing live, and it's like if you took a mid 70s punk band and time traveled them back to the 60s. That's how unusual the MC5 was at the time. The closest thing you could find to what the MC5 was doing was what the avant-garde jazz guys were doing. John Coltrane in 1967 and Archie Shepp and Pharoah Sanders and all those cats who were just oh, look at that classic picture of Wayne.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that I had this on there. I should have put this up earlier.
Yeah, that's back in the MC5 days. That's probably from '68, probably from that famous college yard gig that they did. You know, as much as Rob Tyner was their front man, some of the best singing and that was done with that band, Wayne Kramer was singing the lead vocals on that stuff. It's so exciting. I say it's exciting to watch the MC5 back in '68 performing on live on stage, but my feeling about that is a reflection of the time that I grew up. I know there are exciting players that come up in the '80s and '90s afterwards, but it might be difficult, but if you can put yourself into the time in which they were playing and imagine what American society was like, and to hear these guys go out there and, I mean, remember that Elvis, they had to shoot Elvis from the waist up because it was considered obscene in the 50s to show Elvis gyrating his hips.
Yep.
All right. So that kind of thing was still apparent. And these guys were, they didn't care if they were on TV. They went out live and did this shit. And it was just, it's so powerful if you can recognize how conservative America was when they did this. It's just
America always is, and that's any of these counterculture movements are always going to be controversial. I mean, it was kind of like a badge of honor in the '90s to have your song pulled from the radio. So
there are quite a few videos of MC5 playing live, but I think my goal for after this call and over the course of the next month is I actually want to dive more into their discography, just because I think I would really enjoy it.
There's not a lot there. There's 4 albums, I think, of material. I just love the shit out of them. I really do. And I love the shit out of Brother Wayne.
I think on that note, I am going to end the stream for the evening. So I'd like to thank you guys for... Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Thank you for indulging me. I feel like you indulged me here, and I hope that, I love that. Hold on, I got a phone call coming in. I hope that, I'm pleased that Rebecca's planning to go back and probe the catalog some more, and I hope Beckett will at least take a listen to this album and check out the lyrics, because they're really astonishingly good.
Some good writing.
Yeah.
I actually thought you were going to be like, hey, sorry, I'm getting a phone call. Hello.
I also thought that.
It's my agency, so I don't care if I ever work again.
All right. But thank you guys for joining me, and I hope to catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.